All right, let's move to number 6, which is the Comics Code Authority. Oh, are we going to agree with this one? Let's read, see what he has to say about it. DC Horror Comics changed the game down the road, but the Silver Age was devoid of horror for a long time. The main reason is simple. The Comics Code Authority, EC Comics, a company that created horror and crime comics, was beating Marvel and DC in sales. A moral panic ensued, and the industry formed the Comics Code Authority, a body made to self-censor in the comic book industry. This destroyed EC, which is what it was meant to do, but also made sure that the big two couldn't do horror comics, among other things. The Comics Code Authority strictures also affected the way villains could be portrayed and took away any shade of gray from the storytelling. The CCA was a big reason why Silver Age comics are so simple. All righty. Eric, I'm going to let you go on this one.
All right. Well, he's sort of correct. They were beating. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how, if they were beating DC. They may have. Probably were beating. It would have been, I guess, Atlas at the time.
Atlas at the time, yeah.
Yeah. And yes, a moral panic. Okay, that's a little simplistic. That was, we were kind of at that particular time. Yeah, I guess we were trying to live simple and clean. Like, remember, there was a Hays Code in the movie industry, so that was, our basically, there were people trying to censor our entertainment. So yes, to a point, he is right. The comics, the trials that ended EC and basically neutered comics. Yeah, that may be why the Silver Age was so simple, but it also probably led to the superhero revival, which is why the comic book industry is still alive, albeit on life support in some places now. But so, I guess it's not that simple. But I don't know. I should have probably thought this out a little better. But yeah, I did. Everything. They said, bad guys could not win. You couldn't even. I don't even know if you could do 2-part stories or continuing stories, because even the illusion that they might win was verboten.
Now you could, because we had like the Kingpin had a 2-issue. Series.
By that time it was already starting to lose its teeth. It just like you started seeing more in the 60s. There was still a Hays Code in Hollywood, but you started getting away with more and more.
Right.
And then by the early 70s, it was like, what code? And the same thing kind of happened in the early 70s with the drug issues. And
I think that's
the
what
code loosened up considerably.
That's what really I think hurt the code, because they released these, they were successful, and people were like, wait a second, you could do this?
I got a question.
Yeah.
The Comics Code Authority, to my understanding, has always been a voluntary
thing. But if you
Self-imposed.
didn't adhere to it, newsstands wouldn't put your books up on their stand. They were basically all in bed with the government, because they didn't want the government coming down on them. So the only companies that didn't have to basically adhere to were Dell, because Dell was so homogenized anyway. They knew that there was nothing to worry about there. But if you didn't play by the code's rules, you couldn't get distributed.
I see.
And that was the death sentence.
Okay, so a little. Go ahead. And then
I was going to say, so because I'm trying to understand, because I wasn't around during this era, but
neither was I.
It sounds like this was very similar to what happened in the video games industry about 2 decades ago when they instituted their own, the ESRB, and they self-censored because they foresaw that the government was going to do it if they didn't, and they said, well, we'd rather do it ourselves than have government regulation telling us what to do. Yeah. Was that the case with comic books?
Yes.
Or because this makes it all conspiracy tinfoil hat, like where it's like DC and Marvel were like, we'll crush EC by making this code. Like,
yeah, they do. It does sound like that. That's where this is wrong. You're right. It does sound like that. But what ended up happening, of course, we all heard of Frederick Wortham, The Seduction of the Innocents, the book. Don't go and if you want to read it, I'm telling you, it is the driest, most boring thing it is. So
I couldn't
dull.
get through it.
But what he proposed was, it seems like all juvenile delinquents read comics. Therefore, comics causes juvenile delinquents.
Right.
But once again, as we all say, they also drink water. They wore clothes. You know, it's like maybe there's something more to it. And what ended to happen is exactly, you know, and I'm cutting this short as well. But what ended up happening was the publishers got together and they said, you know what, we either do this or they're going to do this. And it was better that they do it themselves. You had things like Breen said, where the villains had to lose at the end. If you go back and you read the 1970s Joker, that is a whole bunch of individual stories. It's 9 issues, 10 if you get the omnibus. But everyone was its individual story, because at the end of each story, Joker had to be thrown in jail. They couldn't do a 9-issue or what was going to be a 10-issue series with the Joker, because he had to be in jail at the end of every issue. And that they did say, however, you could get away with stuff in magazines, and that's why you did see stuff like the Rampaging Hulk or Vampirella, stuff like that end up in magazines. That way they could get away with more. Morbius actually had a good run of magazines stories
but
as well.
by that time, the code was pretty much toothless. Now eerie and creepy in those magazines, that's different.
I was going to get to the drug issues with Spider-Man. Something that not a lot of people know is that the people who really wanted to get this out first was Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams. They wanted to do this. They were clamoring, we've got a great story for you. And I believe it was Schwartz, was it? Or is it Infantino who was editing? It was Schwartz, right?
Both of them were there at the time.
Okay. But they were saying no. And then Stan Lee had the deal with the government, and he puts out his drug issues. And then you have Green Arrow with Speedy. And Neil Adams also was big into wanting to push Batman into darker tales. So as Eric was saying, this thing was weakening. You had artists like Neil Adams who kept going to the editors and saying, we don't need to follow this thing anymore. Don't push the code on us so much. Let us be a bit freer. And as it went, the comics code just got less and less, to the point where once they did the Baxter series of Omega Men and Legion of Superheroes, the Teen Titans, it was done. It's like the king. He's not making any rules, but he's the head of it anyway.
Yeah, it's like a monarchy then. But I will say, well, the one thing, if he comes close to getting anything right here, if the design of those trials were to take out EC, they were successful, because the EC tried. They introduced a new line of books called New Direction, and most of them would get returned. The boxes would get returned unopened. There was nothing they could do. Then they tried magazines, the Picto Fiction.
Yeah.
But those couldn't get any traction, because for whatever reason, I don't know why they watered those down comparatively to what they'd been doing, because the magazines didn't have to follow the same thing. That's basically Gaines was smart enough to take tales calculated to make you mad or drive you mad to Mad Magazine, which not only survived, became their biggest product. It kept them in business until they sold it to National.
My comic shop, by the way, just got a couple of like the comic book size Mad magazines. Yeah. Like I just put it up there.
Yeah, but they also, real close, they also, not only did they take out EC, they took out 2/3 of the comic book companies with them. So that's true.
Let's
I just want to real quick. I just want to say
one more, and then we're getting comments.
No, just real quick. The Comics Code Authority seems to be the best era of comics.
That is true. They had to get creative. You're right about that. They had to get creative. Okay, so Ethereal saying most people hated the code and it was based on facts. Cartoons is saying it was some murder who had similarities between it and an EC Comics, and everyone freaked out. Okay. Let's see. Moran is saying, honestly, I do not want to see shades of gray in any villains. Villains are bad and are not to be admired in any way, shape, or form. Heroes should be heroic, not villainous. I would like to see a return of the classic villain, at least for a little bit. Horror comics still happen. They just never had bad endings where the protagonist would never die, says Ahsoka. The comics code was socialist, says Undead Quinn. Ahsoka's also saying, I mean, let's be honest here, Maranya, some villains are not going to kill kids. Some would rescue kids. Alrighty. So also, let's see, should have deported Frederick back to Germany. Ahsoka saying, let's be honest here, a good amount of villains, especially Flash and some Batman villains, would probably be heroes in a time when when heroes aren't there. I could see a couple. I could definitely see the Rogues, a few members of the Rogues actually taking time to help if necessary. Let's see. Were there any comics that with subtlety criticized the Comics Code Authority? I'm pretty sure there were.
I know, but I want to piggyback after Maria's comment about the villains not being gray, just being evil. Mark Silvestri took Joker in the Batman and the Joker Deadly Duo. He had Joker kill a bunch of people on a train because they had to lighten the load on the train, otherwise, in order to cause the train to stop. So Batman's taking these basically tearing apart the train, trying to do everything he can to throw it off the train so he can lighten the load. Joker just kills a bunch of people, and Batman's just like, you murdered people. He's like, well, yeah, duh. I'm not gonna be like you. That's the only way. And we both know that was the only way you were gonna stop the train from crashing. You know, is because it was gonna be controlled by a thing, automatic. So they get down to a precise weight. And like, I want Joker should not be someone must be idolizing. Joker is a creepy bastard. You know, it's something that you should be like, Batman, put him down for once. Everybody should be cheering him. Like, dude, put him down for once because he's an evil son of a bitch.
Yep, I agree.
That's
why I did not like the new Joker movie.
Alrighty, let's see. So there might as well be no stories of good versus evil then, because villains have good sides to them, and people want to have heroes and evil sides.
Magneto, is he a villain or a hero? It just seems like he's become a hero.
Okay, let's see. Nightcap was controversial, but MK was a bigger deal because of the fatality. Okay, I don't know what you're talking about there. Let me get back to this. Seduction of the Innocent was only made all the books they reference worth tens of thousands of dollars today. Yeah, that is true. Dave is saying, I love the Rampaging Hulk. So do I. I hope you're enjoying those magazines there, sir. Joe Lieberman made a big deal over MK to Congress. He's talking Mortal Kombat. Imagine going back in time and showing these people gender queer. Oh, that's you, dude. Yeah, I think there's a lot of comments. I'm gonna skip.
That's his comment. It's not him, genderqueer.
Yeah. All righty. Let's move on to topic number 5 here, and it is Silver Age comics were written for children. Wait, didn't we cover this?